Welcome to Business Insight Fredericton. I'm Krista Ross, CEO of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. In today's episode, we'll be speaking to organizations who are helping in our community. First up, I'll speak to Warren Maddox, who's the Executive Director of the Fredericton Homeless Shelters.
Fundamentally, what our role is within the community and what our organization is a housing-focused shelter. So we're trying to get these people, male, female, trans, whatever the case is, straightened out, connected, position, then we'll advocate for them for housing, move them into housing, provide them with furniture, household items, food boxes, all those sorts of things. So it's really the most critical program the shelters does is the continuum. Now within the continuum, there's probably 6, 7, 8 different programs or projects that we're running at any time.
Tell me a bit of the history or the heritage of the Fredericton Homeless Shelters.
So we've been around almost 40 years. We came into existence about 2 months after the community kitchen came into existence. Sadly, what we've become really overall is a mental health institution. Compounding that and making it more complex, you have drug addiction issues, and of course the poison that's the most prevalent in Fredericton right now is crystal meth.
And it's not something that we hear a lot about. So tell me how that's impacting your clients.
It takes an underlying mental health issue that's there and makes it about 1,000 times worse. Then you have the physical detriment that crystal meth does, and it's one of these weird drugs that it doesn't just attack your brain, it attacks your body. So people are in incredibly bad positions.
What is the structure of the organization? Do you have boards and committees and how many staff? Tell me about that.
The people that work at the shelters are paid to do so. It's just because it's a wild environment. So there's a board, then there's I'm on the board, and then I'm also the middle guy between ops and the board. We're a fairly flat organization, so there's not like the classic pyramid style. There's me, I have 6 managers, and then the staff.
Are many of your clients long-term clients, or do you have a lot of short-term clients that make their way along the continuum?
I think the average turnover time for us with residents is running around 55 to 60 days, roughly. There are others that will, just because of housing options that are out there or their circumstance or whatever the scenario is, we tend to hold a little longer.
If there was a message that you want to get out to the community about the work that you're doing, is the message about fundraising? Is the message about how people can help your clients? What is the message that you would want to get out?
There's a couple. One, it is about fundraising. We need funds to be able to operate and do what we do. One of the things that we looked at was in terms of messaging and branding and who do I talk to. One of the things is landlords. That if you have some apartments, 1 bedrooms or bachelors, become part of the rent sub program for the province. It's easy, it's good for the business. We have rent subs attached to our transitional space. Money appears every month, right on clockwork in our bank account. It's really easy. For the other people in the community, keep supporting us.
So when you talk about fundraising or when you talk about financial need, where does your money come from? Is it all through donations and fundraising, or do you get some government funds?
So our money comes in a lot of different ways. So I have 38 revenue streams that I nurture and maintain. We have a provincial government contract that covers about 9.5% of our budget. The rest of it we raise. So there's some federal contracts that we have with the Homeless Partnership Strategy through Service Canada. We have a lot of our stuff in terms of homelessness, whether it's off reserve or Homeless Partnership Strategy, comes from Service Canada. The rest of it we earn.
So how big is your budget, and what's the dollar figure that you have to raise each year?
I have to raise about $900,000 a year.
So tell me how you go about that.
You work constantly, really. I work 6 days a week at it. But it's everything from the 6-year-old to the McCain Foundation. It's from people that are dropping off clothing to us, that we go through it, we sort it, we keep what we need, and then we sell the excess fiber. It's applying for grants. I write a lot.
If each year you're starting from scratch, raising nearly $1 million, How do you communicate with people that might contribute to you? You've mentioned mailouts, but what about social media? How present are you on social media?
Really, the overall strategy is to be top of mind. So I'll do, maybe anywhere from the rough numbers, about 100 interviews a year through various different media channels.
Over the last 2 years, we've had a significant impact globally with a pandemic. How did that impact your clients, your services, and your fundraising?
It had absolutely fundamental impact right down to the core of us. The space we're sitting in now closed as a women's shelter for a period of 8 weeks, and we turned it into an isolation quarantine space. Had to hire our nurses to work out of here. Supply chain issues have been unpleasant, but there was, sort of a 12, 13-month period where, you'd hear a lot on this stuff about people saying, well, I can't go into work and this and that. And then there was us that we had to go into work.
How did it impact fundraising?
Our events just went, which was like, holy cow. You're looking at the budget going, wow, that's going to hurt. Sort of immediately $75,000 disappears from your revenue stream.
So over the years that you've been here, Warren, what would you say is your biggest success? And before you answer, is success measured in money? Is success measured in growth? Or is success measured in people moving on to permanent homes?
The successes that feel really good to my staff and to me are, the guys that come in or gals that come in that are so messed up and scared and very much self-focused. That's the nature of being homeless, is that you start surviving for yourself. So they come in really messed up, and then 3, 4, 5 months later, you get to see their faces when you're putting furniture in their apartment for the first time in a while. It's been neat to see the last about a year and a half, 2 years, that there's something now called housing-focused shelters, which is what we are.
Tell me about organizations that help the shelters.
There's everything from the Cotton Mill Quilters Guild, which we were to last week. Bliss Carman School did a drive where there's a bunch of toothbrushes come our way, and then Jeff Thompson matched it $1 for a toothbrush, to the Wise Service Club, to the McCain Foundation, to the United Way, and it's literally from the 4-year-old Ruby right on up to St. Anne's Court that do a 50-50 draw for us.
What projects are in the hopper?
We want a new transitional house very badly. Unfortunately, one of the impacts of COVID has been the real estate market, which has not been kind to us. We're just in the middle of buying a piece of land up on Woodside Lane, which is a big lot, and I do have plans for that.
Welcome back to Business Insight Fredericton. I'm Krista Ross, CEO at the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. In this episode, we're talking to organizations that help people in our community. And next up, we're speaking to Alex Boyd, Executive Director of the Greener Village.
It started as a food bank back in 1983, but it really has become a much more cohesive approach to helping people who are facing hunger and food insecurity. So we have a community garden, we have our food bank, that's the kind of core of what we do, helping people with the immediate need for groceries. We also have a learning kitchen like you're standing in, and we have our unique boutique, which is offering low-cost clothing items to the whole community, many different facets to an organization that's helping people who are struggling.
So how did the organization originally get started?
Well, it started in a basement in a church. 1983, where someone said, you know what, there are people who are struggling. I mean, there was an economic downturn. People were really having a hard time putting food on the table. We saw a bunch of food banks all across the country kind of spring up at the same approximate time.
So tell me how you ended up in this large facility from your humble beginnings in a church basement.
It's a story of slow and incremental growth. It was a closet, and then it was a bigger room, then it was a baby barn on the parking lot. Our client numbers were growing. We knew that we wanted to do more. What was Green Village became available, and we said, is this as perfect can be? They already were a growing operation, so the ability to grow vegetables was almost prepared for us. The building was a large open space, so we were able to kind of visualize what we thought it could look like. This building really allowed us to instill a lot more dignity into the process. Greener Village has 10 staff, and our organization should have 30 staff if it wasn't for all the great volunteers that invest their time and their energies to make sure that we can do what we do really well.
Well, here's your opportunity to pitch. Are you always looking for volunteers?
We are always looking for volunteers. So there are volunteers who come and they just want to pack a hamper. They want to hand it out to the client. We have opportunities for them, and then there are volunteers who have specialized training or specialized skills that they can offer.
So you've told me about the volunteers and the staff. I'm really interested in hearing about the clients. Tell me about how many you have, how they find you, how they get here physically, and what do you do for them?
They're as different as the rest of the community is different. You know, we have people who are working 3 jobs and having a hard time making ends meet. We have people who are stuck in a cycle of poverty and are on social assistance. We have people who have lost their job and they have 0 income. The clients are people who are hungry. And I'm a father, so I can imagine if I didn't have the ability to feed my kids tonight, that would be pretty distressing. It would be a weight on my heart and my shoulders to make sure that people have what they need.
So your core service is really the food bank. How many clients do you have?
You know, it varies month to month. You know, sometimes a person may come for 1 month because they had a car breakdown or they had an emergency expense. Some people have been coming to us for a number of years because, like I said, they're stuck in a cycle of poverty. But we serve somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 families each month, as high as 1,300, but that's, you know, in extreme months when there's lots going on.
If a family is in need and you're supporting them in that way, what can they get from the food bank?
Our food hamper has frozen protein products, so meat, bread, milk, eggs, some fruit, some vegetables, and then it's got like the kind of core pantry items, so canned soup and canned pasta, dry pasta, pasta sauce, all the things that, you know, you go to your hamper, you can pull out and you can make a meal with. It's about a 5 to 7 day food supply, hopefully making those ends that are too far apart be just that much closer.
Tell me a little bit about your donors. When you're looking for donors, are you looking for people to write a check? Are you looking for people to donate products? What are you looking for from donations?
I always say that there's 4 major ways that you help an organization like Greener Village. You make that financial donation, you make that food donation, you donate your time by volunteering, or you talk about us. And that's the one that often gets forgotten in the mix. When you talk about Greener Village, you're just having a coffee and you're chatting about it, that has a measurable impact on Greener Village.
So speaking of donors and speaking of finances and finance committees and such, what is your annual budget each year and how much of it comes from donations versus, let's say, government funding?
Greener Village funding from government is less than 10%. We do get money for seed students and Canada Summer Jobs, which if you add that in is a little extra, but our budget's about $1 million a year, actually 1.1 in 2022, and that, you know, will help us to buy food, provide programming, pay for the costs of our building, and, you know, we have 2 trucks that are on the road almost all the time, picking up food, taking it to other agencies, delivering it to people who need it. We rely largely on the general public to see what we're doing, to say, I believe in what you're doing, and to send that donation in.
Alex, tell me how COVID impacted the organization from the perspective of service to clients, but also fundraising.
Everyone knows that COVID-19 has been a challenge, maybe an extreme challenge. For Greener Village, it actually meant no days missed, because we knew as a staff and as volunteers that we just had to make sure that people who needed food were able to get it. So we've made adjustments. It seems like endless adjustments to try to make sure that we can continue to do that. We've gone to a complete drive-through food bank system, so clients are able to drive up to one door, they can drive to another door, and then we'll provide the food right out to them so that there's less chance of it becoming a problem inside the building.
What would you say is the organization's biggest success? And do you measure success in client service, in dollars? How do you measure it, and what's been your biggest success?
Success is making sure that the people who need us are able to find us. So I really measure success on like the smallest of scales. And when I go home at night, like I said before, I'm always like, that was a good day. You know, we helped people today.
So as the senior staff person here, executive director, what is the most difficult challenge you've faced in that role?
I think that the uncertainty of COVID-19 has certainly been probably the kind of the flagship challenge of the last few years. And it's difficult when things are changing rapidly. So it felt for a while there, especially in the first few months in 2020, that you would just start to get your feet under you with how things have changed, and then they would change. So it was like juggling blindfolded at times.
What goals does Greener Village have for the next year or the next 3 or even 5 years?
In the next 2 to 5 years, Greener Village is looking at how we can continue to develop ourselves so that we can be a great support to our clients, but also a good support to the other organizations in our community.
So my last question for you today, what are you most proud of?
You know, I'm really proud of my staff and volunteers who, the dedication is just exceptional. I mean, they make me feel like I'm undedicated because they're just so devoted to getting the work done for the people who need it.
Welcome back to Business Insight Fredericton. I'm Krista Ross, CEO of the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce. Today, we're talking to organizations that help people in the community. And next up is Cassandra Leblanc. She's the Executive Director of the Fredericton Community Kitchens.
Our main mission is to feed Frederictons hungry, and we've been doing that since 1982. So we have several programs all really centered around that mandate. Our longest standing program is our daily meal program, where we provide meals to anyone in need. And our other really major program is our student hunger program, where we provide lunches and backpacks of non-perishables to students.
How many people do you tend to serve in the run of a day or a week or a year?
So on average, we provide 150,000 meals to the Fredericton community. And that would translate through our daily meal program. We would see anywhere from 50 to 100 different people that go through the community kitchens. And then our student hunger program is anywhere from 150 to 250 students in the schools.
Tell me a little bit about what else you do in your life, because you are a busy person.
I spend the rest of my spare time as a city councillor here in Fredericton. I'm the councillor for Ward 10. I'm a busy person. I tend to pack my schedule pretty big.
Tell me a bit more about the student hunger program.
The student hunger program was started back in 2014. And it began with concerned teachers at Leo Hayes High School that identified that there could be up to 200 students in the community that might be in need. So it started small. It started with just one school, and then it quickly expanded to 5 schools. And now, you know, it's 2022 and we're up to 20 schools. We have this location at 65 Brunswick Street, which is where we've been for a long, long time. But we also have a second kitchen that sits on the Leo Hayes property called Kim's Kitchen. And that's where we run our student hunger program out of. So we have a student hunger coordinator that makes all the magic happen. We have our delivery driver that does all of the deliveries to all of the schools. We have 9 staff members right now. And then we depend on a lot of volunteers on a daily basis.
Tell me a bit about your clients. How are you able to help them? In what ways? And tell me who they are.
So we really have a diverse clientele. Some of the clients might be people that are working minimum wage jobs that just don't have the extra income, and they come here and they grab a free meal. There's people that are retired. There's people living on welfare. There's people that are indeed homeless and living on our streets rough. There's families, there's students. We really do serve a lot of different people in the community.
I know that you're active on social media. Tell me about how you get your message out, and what is that message?
So our message is that we feed Frederictons hungry, and we do it in a lot of different ways. And we are a charity, so you know, the majority of our funding comes from donations and grants, and we really depend on the community to continue to operate year after year.
So then you really have 2 types of messages. One to the people that can come here and be welcomed and have their needs met, and the other is to people that can help the organization. Tell me about that messaging and campaigns that you may have had about that.
Yeah, so we've done several different campaigns, especially last year. We did our Give 5 campaign where we challenged the community to sign up to give $5 a month to help feed Fredericton's hungry. And then we did one called the Student Hunger Month, and it was incredibly fun. And we just want people to know, like, you can volunteer. That is one way that you can help our organization. You can share our posts and share our message, because that can be incredibly powerful. And you can donate. There's a lot of different ways you can donate.
So when you talk about grants and donations, give me a sense of the size of your budget and how much of that comes from donations or grants or government funding.
Each year it costs about $600,000 a year to run our operations, and about 90% of that comes from donors, I would say. About 5 to 7% comes from grants, and then a small percentage comes from government funding.
You've mentioned the pandemic a couple of times in our conversation. Tell me how COVID impacted your fundraising efforts.
So we had to completely shift how we do fundraising. We ended up doing 2 online campaigns. Thankfully, there was also a lot of emergency funding, especially that first year, provided by the federal government and various different organizations. So that was incredibly important. There hasn't been a lot of online fundraising that's been really successful. So we were nervous, and we're just really glad that the community came out in support.
Tell me about how COVID impacted your clients and your service to your clients.
The first year, our biggest challenge was the schools closed suddenly. And we have our student hunger program that depends on the schools operating for our program to run. So we ended up doing a weekly delivery of groceries from March till August to 15 schools in Fredericton, and it was about 150 to 180 families. The other big challenge is here at the 65 Brunswick Street. Because this is such a small facility, we haven't been able to open. We opened for a very short period of time when all of the restrictions have gone away, but that only lasted about a month. So it's had a pretty significant impact on our guests. It's had a significant impact on our operations and on our finances.
Tell me about the organizations that have helped the community kitchens.
Well, we have our partners in town, like the Fredericton Homeless Shelter, Greener Village, or Moncto Food Bank. We have the Multicultural Association. We have Fredericton Anti-Poverty. We have our school partners. So many businesses contribute to the community kitchens, whether it's an annual donation, a monthly donation, whether they've given large grants in the past. Even for our campaigns, we had sponsors for all of those campaigns, and all of those sponsors contributed.
The economy, or the success of the economy, probably has an impact on the organization. How do you feel about the future? How do you feel about the opportunities here in New Brunswick, and how do you think they'll impact this organization?
Our food costs have gone up. So that will have an impact on the organization. It'll mean we'll need to divert more of our funding each year to actually procurement of food. When there's a downturn in the economy, it has an impact on donations. It has an impact on the business community, and it has an impact on their ability to give. I believe in my board, and I believe in this staff, and I believe in our volunteers, and I believe in the Fredericton community.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Business Insight Fredericton. If you were inspired by the Greener Village, the shelters, or the Fredericton Community Kitchens, make it a point to do something about it today. Don't just think about it. Make a contribution, share a social media post, or donate today. Thanks so much. We're always looking for great companies with a unique story to feature on the show. If you have suggestions, please get in touch with us.